your destiny, right? So dreaming is great, but you know, I've forgotten the person that said, I think it was Ashley Bright, is everybody has a great idea, right? But very few people have the ability to actually execute that idea to perfection, right? So every time I see someone and you know, I did a said, look, I was on the Lions Den program, and obviously I see a lot of entrepreneurs and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. For me, the difference is not the idea. Everybody has an idea. The difference is that person's conviction and that person's ability. So I look in the eyes and I say, will this person stay when the going gets tough, right? If the person stays when the going gets tough, they're usually successful. If they walk, then you're going to lose your money. So the next thing is passionate. I've said a lot about being passionate. Be passionate, be driven. I remember the story, I don't know how many of you know the story of the El Cortez Hotel in San Diego, when there's a janitor who had worked there for 19 years, and the hotel was thriving, was doing extremely well, but it had outgrown its infrastructure. And when they built this hotel, they had only one elevator. So they brought all the sort of architects and business people together and said, look, how do we make sure we can fulfill our potential in this hotel? Because we've got so many clients. How do we put a second elevator so people can get to the top? And they thought of cutting holes through the floors, they thought of drilling, they thought of converting the staircase, they thought of expanding the core. And so there's so many things they thought of. At the end of the day, they decided to cut the holes through the floors. The problem is that they would have had to close the hotel for, I think, 3 or 4 months to do that. It was going to be expensive, it was going to be dusty, and they would have had no clients, and they would have needed a lot of money. The janitor heard this, right, whilst he was cleaning, and he thought to himself that if they close the hotel for that period of time, obviously he hasn't got a job. So he walks up to the principal of the hotel, and he says, I heard you talking about putting the elevator in and you're going to close this hotel. And he said, yes, we're doing X, Y, Z, but why do you want to know? He says, well, he doesn't want to lose his job, but he has a great idea. And the principal said, well, you know, okay, what's that idea? I'm in a hurry, right? And he said, have you ever thought of putting the elevator on the outside? So you don't have to close the hotel. You build the elevator and you run the hotel. And the principal thought to himself, wow, that's actually a good idea. I don't know how many of you have been to San Diego, but that hotel is probably one of the top 3 hotels in San Diego. It's known for a lot, but more importantly, that janitor went on to become the principal of that hotel. He managed that hotel. The rooms and some of the conference rooms there are named after him. He was an astounding success. And why? He was passionate, he was thoughtful, but what drove him was the passion to keep his job. Yes? Where did he get to? He got to that height and he got to that ceiling. Excellence. So we all talk about excellence. We talk about it in abundance. When I said that Tony stole my speech, my entire theme of what I speak about day in, day out is about excellence. I think this is number one ingredient, right, to make sure you get from A to B, right? So, the great thing about us in Nigeria is that excellence here is an absolute currency. Yeah, there's loads of opportunities to be excellent. There are very few people who have the desire or the will to be excellent. So there's so little competition. But once you're excellent, yes, you will always get to where you want to be. I mean, you just simply couldn't fail with excellence. Next slide, be principled. So, people talk about principles often, and again, it's like excellence. It's a currency. If you're honest, you're reliable, you're principled, your word is your bond, people just generally come back all the time. They trust you. You make very long-term decisions. You behave in a long-term manner rather than a short-term manner. Someone once said to me, live your life today. And I agree. Live your life today. Reflect on the past, plan for the future, but live in the moment. But while you're living in the moment, just remember that there's a future. So don't do the things that will affect your future. And that's what principles are all about. Principles are about how you want to be seen in the future. You apply today. So being principled is certainly very important. So generally, just be a good person. And nobody needs to describe what a good person is. It's easier to be bad, by the way, than to be good. But be a good person. Right. And resilience. We've talked a lot about resilience. Very few people don't agree, or very few people would say they're not resilient. Yeah? But resilience is when You go into a challenge, you feel you're outside your comfort zone, you're being pushed back, yet you still drive forward. That's what resilience is. But what resilience means you're prepared to fail. It doesn't really mean that you're strong or you're brave. It means that I will fail, I will die trying, even if I don't succeed. I don't know how many of you here know Michael Jordan, but and you know that famous Michael Jordan quote. He said, he has played 9,000 basketball games. He lost 300 games. He took, I've forgotten all the numbers, but I think it was 150, 160 different shots. He had the opportunity to win a game with the game-winning shot and lost it 26 times. He has failed and failed and failed again. But you know what? He has succeeded because he's the world's most famous #1 basketball player, right? Despite the number of times he fails. And that's why resilience is important, because once you're not afraid to fail, you will succeed. But to understand failure or to understand success, you need to fail a couple of times. So I've given you some of what I feel are my nuggets. As I said, I wasn't going to lecture you, I was going to tell you a few stories. So I'll follow up my next few slides with a few what I call useful tools and hints. So the first one is surround yourself with people that you want to be. It's very, very understated. Not a lot of people understand the value of it, right? But if you're ambitious, surround yourself with ambitious friends, right? If you're not ambitious, it's okay. But if you're ambitious, surround yourself with ambitious friends. When 2 friends, 3 friends, 4 friends have gotten together that have equal ambition, you know what it does? It creates competition. The things you talk about, the things you do, right, are things that make you better. You would have heard all the stories. I'm sure you've heard the sort of the Google story, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And they were great friends, childhood friends. They grew up, they challenged each other. And today, there are 5 billion people that use Google. We've heard the Microsoft story. The Microsoft story of Paul Allen and Bill Gates. Again, friends. Yes. They worked together, they challenged each other. Right? And there's several stories, I'm just telling the most popular ones, but there's several stories. But do surround yourself with ambitious friends. And in any business you're in, surround yourself with people that want to go to the places you want to go to. Not with the people who are like, oh, it's all right, let's party tonight. The next tool, I would say, network relentlessly. A lot of people undervalue networking, right? We feel that, I'm out of my comfort zone. I don't really want to see people. I can read this in a book, or I can talk to my friends. Network relentlessly. The more people you know that you don't know, the better you are for it. There's a phrase I've actually forgotten, but it goes to something like your net worth is your network, right? It's so important to actually network, to meet people. As a matter of fact, I read a statistic, 73% of professional jobs in the world, yes, are as a result of networking. Not necessarily your CV, just loose networking. And there was a book, and I've forgotten who wrote it, but it was called, gosh, I wrote this down somewhere. It was called The Strength of Weak Ties. I've forgotten who wrote the book, but it's a great book. And what it does, it preaches the value of networking, right? And what networking does, it doesn't mean that you're making lifelong friends. It means you have some weak ties. I met you here, I met Tony here, we had this conversation. 3 years later, there's a break I need. I see Tony on TV. I call her, I say, Tony, remember me? I sat next to you in that place. And she says, oh yes, how are you? I said, I need a favor. That's what networking is, right? It's so important to create the strength of loose ties. Increase your surface area of luck. So a lot of people say, well, she was just lucky, or he was just lucky. Luck is intentional. Don't get me wrong, luck is incredibly intentional. I'm sure, so I wanted to tell the story, the Libby story, the Samsung story. So what do you mean by increase your surface area of luck? So Libby, the first thing he did with his family was vegetables. Then he did furniture. Then I think he did used cars. Then he moved into electronics, and I think for the older ones in the room will remember the black and white TVs that turned to color. Stop nodding, you're not old enough to remember black and white TV. then today, I'm sure most of you, at least the younger ones in the room, know Samsung for the phones, right? It's been one of the most successful companies on planet Earth, right? And why? Because Libby increased his surface area for luck. Some people say I'd rather be lucky than smart. But you know what luck actually does? What this increasing of the surface area for luck actually does? It actually challenges that conventional wisdom or that notion that luck is by chance. It's not. It's not by chance. You have to do it. You have to be intentional about it. You have to do things several times to create your luck. Yes, you have to actually cultivate a fertile ground so luck can prevail. Yeah, luck doesn't just come. The guy selling oranges. Yes, if you sit at the back of a building and you put your oranges on a tray and you wait for people to pass by and buy the oranges, you're likely not to sell a lot of oranges. If you get into the middle of the road, the traffic intersection, you risk your life with the cars moving, you smell a few fumes, you put your oranges in through people's windows, you're likely to sell more oranges, right? You're both lucky that someone bought the orange, but one person increased the surface area of luck a lot more than the other. Know your numbers. Oh, yes. Know your numbers. Understand your market. It's so important in business to actually understand the market. So I always hear people say, and I see this a lot on the Lions Den program. Someone comes and says, there are 200 million Nigerians. If 10% of 10% of these Nigerians, 20 million Nigerians, if 10% of those buy it, that's 2 million. My product is valued at $10 a head, and then they extrapolate, right? Easiest way to fail. Easiest way to fail. You have to know your market. When people say, so I'll give you some tight examples. Let's look at India, for instance, and Nigeria, right? India and Nigeria, fast growing population, a lot of infrastructure challenges, loads of opportunity, yes? And on the face of it, growing middle class, governments neither here nor there, right? But on the face of it, they look similar, right? But the things you do in India, if you try them in Nigeria, you will fail. And the things you do in Nigeria, if you try them in India, you're unlikely to succeed because there's some small nuances that are different, right? Nigerian people have let me not get into politics, right? Let me leave it like that. So two countries with a lot of the same headline indices, but very, very different. So knowing your numbers is important. I was reading a story about Bill Gates. And Bill Gates said that when he started Microsoft, he approached 1,200 people. Of the 1,200 people, 900 people said, not interested. 300 people said, I'll think about it. Of the 300 people, 85 of them actually did think about it. Okay? Of the 85, 30 of them took it a step further. Of the 30, only 11 of them actually got involved. Those 11 people made him a billionaire, right? So the fact that you started with 1,200, right, and less than 1% responded positively doesn't mean you'll fail, right? You've got to stick with it. You've got to believe in it, but you've got to actually know the market you're in. You've got to know your numbers. You've got to know what makes it tick. I've just finished speaking about know your numbers. Yes. So I don't know whether anybody's heard of the theory of balance. The theory of balance. And the theory of balance is that in your youth, and even in our adulthood, most people say, you know what, I want a balanced life. I want friends, I want family, I want work, I want sports, I want health. I've got news for you. The reality is, unless you're a genius, right, the theory of balance is a fallacy. Right? You literally have to choose exactly what it is that's important to you, yes, and excel in that. And all the other things, you're going to find a way to cope. Yeah. Right? And there's some statistics on this. 98% of people, yes, that choose to have several routes rather than one thing that they kill don't actually achieve it.
True.
The theory of balance is a fallacy. It is unlikely, unless you're A, extremely lucky, B, you're a genius, that you ever reach the upper rungs of economic security if balance is your priority. It's fact. Statistically, it's a fact, and in reality, it's a fact. And I'm not saying don't get a life. Hopefully, my wife is not watching this and saying, I now see why you have me calls.
Have one.
But the reality is that it's a
all
fact.
of them.
Yes, you've got to choose what you want to achieve in the moment you want to achieve it, right? And focus on it, and not allow for distractions.
I did it. I had too many things at the same time. Just the day I decided, okay.
We've talked about choosing. Thank you. So we talked about choosing. So you always choose which one you want to be. I think I've more or less dealt with this slide. Yes. The next thing I'd like to talk about is equality. So equality, the starting point of equality, or the theme or theory of equality, is that everybody has 24 hours. We all have the same resources available to us. It's what you do with your 24 hours that actually counts. The theory of trade-off, yes, is, one has to always remember that whatever you choose to do, yes, you're going to make some sacrifices. Aspire for greatness, but just remember that it entails sacrifice. You don't become great without sacrifice. It's never an easy road. The road to success is always under construction. So the last slide, and the last thing I want to say is the just world fallacy. The fact that most people think in life, you get what you deserve. I'm sorry, it's not true. It's absolutely not true. Life is not fair. You don't get what you deserve. It never happens like that. Noble actions are not always rewarded. Evil actions are not always punished. We see it in Nigeria day after day. We see it in our businesses, and we see it in our youth, right? The just word fallacy is not true. You've got to make your own luck. You've got to stop believing in the word fair. And when people come up to you and say it's not fair, you say the world is not fair. Make your own luck. And so my last slide, we're talking about opportunities in this dispensation. So I'd like to leave you with a thought of exactly this. Yes. The opportunity of a lifetime can only be realized in the lifetime of that opportunity. So if today you're thinking of doing something that you think is an opportunity of a lifetime, don't say to yourself, well, let me finish school, or let me finish work, or let me get home first, or let me have a chat with my brother or my sister, right? The opportunity of a lifetime is time specific. When you come back next time, it's not the same opportunity. So if you look at the market today, and you say, yes, the currency is on the run, infrastructure is bad, and there are all sorts of things going against us right now in our macro environment. But there's a lot of opportunity. That opportunity is dealing with the macro environment today. If this environment improves and you think that opportunity is still the same, you won't be able to reap it the same way. So I'd like to leave you with a saying that I started with. You're exactly where you want to be to make the change you want to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that.